So, with 15 years in a truck driving for a company, 200 episodes on the mic on this podcast, and now I'm facing the biggest challenge of my life. This isn't just about podcasting, it's how I survived heartbreak, found connection, and kept creating through the chaos. Let me tell you why I podcast.
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for being here. I am Kris, and this is Podtastic Audio. And more importantly, this is the 200th episode of Podtastic Audio. Thank you once again for being here. I cannot believe I've made it to 200 official episodes. Hey, it's probably more than that because I've done some bonus episodes and things like that. But hey, I'm counting this as episode 200. And because it's episode 200, I was kind of wondering, what do I want to do for episode 200? I know some shows will do reflection shows. Maybe they'll do a back catalog. Here's our favorite moments of the year. Here's our favorite past episodes. But I'm thinking you know what? I don't really want to do that. So today, what I'm going to do is share where I've come leading up into podcasting, the podcasting journey, and where things are going in the future, because it's going to be a lot different moving forward, especially for me and my personal life. But we'll get into that later. But starting it off, if you do not know already, I do not podcast for a living. I do not work for a podcasting company. I don't try to upsell you as an entrepreneur on podcasting classes or coaching stuff or anything like that at all. I only do this podcast because I love podcasting. In fact, I was talking with my therapist last week, and we came to the conclusion that I actually love teaching. I love teaching so much that I do this podcast for free to help you. That's what I enjoy doing. So besides that, my regular job, my normal job that I clock in every day to do, that I've been doing this for about 15 years at this current job, and probably somewhere around 25 years in total. I am a truck driver, if you'd believe that. Yes, I have a commercial driver's license. And more specifically is that I am a local truck driver that delivers gasoline to the gas stations. I'm a gasoline tanker driver. And I've been doing this, like I said, for 15 years at this same company, driving some of the same trucks. I've seen a lot of people come and go, like you do with jobs. I've been there so long that, I got new guys coming in, we got old guys leaving. I've been there so long that I've got the best schedule in the company. I've got the best benefits, the best pay. I've been there for so long. Great. And I'm actually really good at my job. I don't usually say that lightly, but I'm probably the best or one of the best employees they have, meaning that I never screw up. I always get my work done. I'm very efficient. I might be late from time to time, probably because I'm busy doing podcasting stuff here at home. But yeah, I've been there for so long. And the thing about being a driver, whether you're a driver in my company or driver anywhere, it's that the audio and audio radio and audio podcasting and audio books, things of the audio format are things we consume. And since I've been doing it for so long, I've been a driver, like I said, maybe 25 years, maybe even longer if we think about like back when I used to do pizza delivery. So I loved listening to radio, and I loved listening to all the morning shows and all the radio shows, all that fun stuff. So when I heard about podcasting coming out in, I think it was 2009, when I started subscribing to podcasts, and I thought it was super cool, not having any idea that I physically could do a podcast. I just thought it was cool that I could listen to things at my convenience, because it's not always convenient for you, at least for me, to listen to things that were live radio. Sometimes the morning show or the show you're listening to was on at certain times of the day, days that were opposite of my schedule, or I was out busy doing a delivery. I couldn't listen. So I had to like wait till I get back in the truck and then the segment would be over. I would miss it. I'd be like, oh man. But then I found podcasting. And podcasting, I listened to anything I want whenever I wanted. And that was great. But back in 2009, way back then, I even thought about starting a podcast. I was like, well, that'd be kind of cool to do a podcast. In fact, I actually researched in 2009, what did I need to start a podcast? How would I physically make it happen? And like what kind of gear I needed and computer stuff and software and editing stuff. And then it mentioned things like you need to know exactly what you're talking about and have it all scripted out and have a format. And I was like, man, this seems like a lot of work. That's a lot of, I mean, man, that's way over my head. I just want to have fun and just talk. But I think I had that problem that most podcasters face, at least when they're starting out, is what am I going to talk about? Like I had no idea. So I kind of put that idea of creating a podcast just back in the, back of my mind. It wasn't something I was really thinking about. In fact, I moved into more pressing things like, I was actually going through my first divorce with my ex-wife, who we have kids with. And that was somewhere around 2013, the summer of 2013. I remember that very specifically now. And it really hit me very, very hard. It was very painful because we had rented a house together. Obviously, we have kids together. What we're going to do with everything, like financially, how we're going to figure things out. But eventually I did. And then I moved on and I just focused on work and the kids and things like that. And probably maybe a few years later, I had the courage to actually try to purchase a home of my own here in the San Diego County. And when I did that, everybody thought I was crazy. Everybody at work thought I was nuts because housing, costs are very expensive here in San Diego. They weren't as much back then as they are today, but it was manageable back then. But of course, I wasn't going on vacations. I wasn't buying, luxury cars. I wasn't doing anything crazy. I was focusing on myself and the kids. And so I bought my very first house in 2016, all by myself. Now, it was a newer house, a modern house, kind of in the middle of the city area. Not the greatest neighborhood, but, it was something that I bought all by myself. I was very, very proud of. I was out of debt. Aside from my mortgage, I had no car payment, no credit card debt, nothing. I was living the good life. I thought all things were fantastic. In fact, I thought things were doing so well that I decided to buy a sports car for myself to celebrate my amazing success. So here I am with a newer Ford F-150 truck that was totally paid for. I paid it off before I bought the house. And then I decided to buy this sports car, a Nissan 370Z, which was the car I've always wanted. Ever since the 350 came out, I wanted one of those, never could get one. When the 370 came out, I wanted one of those too. I could never, ever get one. It was like the dream car for me. So here I am, somewhat successful, have my own house, have a truck that's paid off. I splurge, I get the car I've always wanted. I am living the dream. Have my own house, have 2 cars, a sports car, and people are very envious of what I have. And I think I was feeling pretty good about my success at that time. I would say that was probably some of the best times and best years of my life, now I think about it, was during that time span when I had my own house, had both vehicles, and I was living the good life. So because I felt really good, here I am, a single dad, having 2 vehicles, my own house, my own success, I felt naturally I would gravitate towards another partner, maybe have a relationship, date a little bit. So then I went on these dating apps. I went on Match and I dated a few girls here and there. Nothing seemed to really click or work out really. And I was just about to cancel the Match subscription. I was like, you know what? This was fun. I dated a little bit, but I'm just going to put this on the back burner for right now and just focus on the kids and maybe other things, other projects, things like that. And so just before I was going to close it down, I get a notification from a girl named Kristine. And she messaged me and she looked at my profile, messaged me, and I was like, okay, let me check this girl out. So I messaged her back. We started talking back and forth like you do on these Match platforms. Start texting, how you doing? What do you do for work? Things like that. And then I say to her, hey, you want to text and maybe we'll meet up for drinks at McGregor's in San Diego because she lived close to that. It's close to where I live. So I was like, hey, why not? So we head on down there and we get drinks and meet up for the first time. I brought my Z Sports car, of course. I want to show that thing off, of course. I love that car. And so I go down there, meet her down there, give her a hug before we go inside. We go inside, get a table. We sit there and have drinks. We just sit and talk for like hours, just talk and hang out. Nothing crazy. And then when the date was over, we both went home. I texted her, make sure you get home okay, things like that. Very sweet, very nice. And then we started texting some more. And I said, hey, do you want to come over to my place and I'll cook you dinner? Meet the kids, And so we did that a little while later. She came over and then the relationship kind of bloomed from there. And then somewhere around maybe a year into our relationship, maybe a little less than that, I had the idea to start a podcast again. And because I felt that Kristine and I had great conversations together, that it would be a good idea to have her as a co-host of the podcast idea. And of course, back then I listened to a lot of like talk shows, a lot of like morning radio type of shows. So that's kind of the format or the vibe of the podcast that I had in my mind that we should create. And to elaborate a little context to me wanting to create a podcast, at my regular day job, the driving job that I have, we are not allowed to use our phones to make calls while we're unloading the truck, loading the truck, and driving the truck. So basically what that means is that we are not allowed to talk to anyone. I mean, anyone while we're at work, which is kind of weird because I know most people, maybe you're included, you're at work, you can talk to your coworkers, you're in an office or a cubicle setting where you can kind of talk to each other, perhaps. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But we're in an environment that we are not allowed to talk to anybody the entire day. And I love to talk. So I think for me, when I created the podcast, it was sort of this outlet for me that I was kind of being held back. I was being kind of cooped up at work, not being allowed to talk to anybody at all the entire day, which is kind of a weird mindset to be in. No meetings, no nothing. I mean, there were some meetings, but not like you really have meetings. And Kristine came from the exact opposite of that. She was in meetings all day long. She talked all day long for her job. So you can see where the clash kind of happens a little bit because I'm really excited to want to do a podcast. Like I love audio, I love radio, I love podcasting. And here I get a chance to do it. I get a chance to talk when I normally don't have that opportunity at my regular job. So I'm all about it. I'm all about talking. I'm all about podcasting. I'm all about talking to others. And I think that's one thing that with my job, it kind of sucks because there's this lack of community. Even though we all work for the same company, we all kind of do the same thing together as a collective, as the way the company sees it. But we're down there working, doing the grind. We don't feel as connected. We don't feel as part of a team. It feels like a individual sport, so to speak. I guess like maybe golf would be, perhaps. So because I couldn't physically talk to anybody, listening on the listening side of things, whether it's podcasts or radio or things like that, became so important for me. It filled that silence and it made me feel less alone while I'm on the road. So of course, naturally, I would gravitate towards a podcast, or at least creating a podcast. So my entire experience with podcasting, most of it has come from the listener side of things. For going back 20 years or whatever it is, listening to podcasts and listening exclusively to audio content, mostly. But going back to the podcast, the Kris and Kristine Show, the show did well, fairly well for what it was, an indie hobby podcast. I had no idea how to create a podcast. I had no idea how to record audio, how to edit audio, and I wasn't even thinking about doing guest interviews. Guest interview stuff was so not even a thought in my head because I couldn't figure out the technology back then, how to do it. We didn't know what Zoom was. At least I didn't know what it was. She used it for work, but I didn't really use it for anything. So the only thing I really knew of was regular phone calls because that's how radio shows took callers. And that's how they did their show was they'd have, callers call in or they have maybe a guest call in on a phone or whatever. So I remember our first interview we did was by phone and I rigged the computer somehow. I think Google Voice or something, called through that. I used something with Windows to kind of glitch the computer to record everything. We kind of could hear everything kind of, and it was a really like amateur way to record a phone call on a computer. And somehow I made it work, and somehow I got the audio, and it made it all in like one single track. And it was a very, very basic way to record a podcast and very basic way to record the interview. But that made me excited about podcasting on another level. Being able to talk to outsiders and have like interview questions and have like a conversation, not just between Kristine and I, which is fine and all, but have a third voice on the show, have somebody else kind of join us. It was kind of like, hey, check out this cool thing I built, this podcast I built. Hey, come check this out. Come over to our world and let's have you on our show. And that's kind of what the interview thing was for me, at least back then. I mean, in the early days, I didn't think about any of this stuff. I just wanted to just have a conversation with Kristine about topics and things that we thought were very interesting. No idea that I thought I'd bring in a guest. Guesting was so far like not even a thought for me. But when I did the first interview, I got hooked again on something really, really cool. So then I started looking up better ways to record guests. Like, how could I do guest interviews? And of course, things like Zoom came up and software like that, and I think Squadcast. And we're talking right kind of the middle of the pandemic, like early days pandemic, when people are shut down, using Zoom a lot for everything and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't like the way Zoom worked, and we didn't do a video show in anyways, because the way we recorded the podcast was at my house that I bought in the master bedroom, which is a big master bedroom. It had like a little nook area off to the side. The bedroom was like 2 levels. I mean, I'm like trying to brag like it's a big bedroom or anything like that, but it had like 2 steps that kind of went up to where the bed would sit, and then 2 stairs that go down to like this other little room. It wasn't very big, but it was big enough for an office desk and like a desk and a computer and a microphone, like a whole podcasting setup. So that was where we did the podcast. And to kind of eliminate the feedback, because when you have 2 microphones in the same room, you're going to get kind of this like crosstalk feedback, mic bleed, as it were. So both microphones will kind of pick up either voice at the same time. To kind of avoid that, I kind of separated us a little bit. I was next to the computer, operating the computer, and Kristine sat probably a good 10 feet away over by the bed in a chair, and she had a little wooden coffee table kind of thing where a microphone got clamped onto that. And so she had the microphone there. She was sitting over there doing the podcast. That way, the cross bleed for microphones was down to a very, very small minimum. That's how we did the podcast in that room, just like that. So we weren't in front of a camera, both of us. My back was facing the computer, facing her, so we could talk and have a conversation. That's kind of how we did the podcast. But I was looking for ways to do guests very easily. That sounded great. And I came across Cleanfeed. Now, I've been using Cleanfeed for a while. In fact, I do use it from time to time still. And it's audio only. It's very clear. It's made for audio professionals. It was designed for radio broadcasting, which I thought was perfect, because here I am listening to a lot of radio broadcasts, going into podcasting. Here's this tool that helped me do things exactly how they do things. I'm like, great. And it's easy to use. It's free. In fact, I did upgrade to the Pro plan a few episodes after using the free plan, because I had ran into some problems with guests. We didn't have headphones or gear and things like that. But that's another story for another day. You know how guests can be. They come on with whatever they have. But anyways, we were doing a lot of those interviews via Cleanfeed, and they sounded fantastic. They sounded like the guest was right here in the room with us. And since it was audio only, the listener had no idea. The listener thought that they were sitting in the room with us. In fact, I used to joke saying things like, hey, how was your flight in today? Hey, was the driver nice today? Which driver did we send down for you today? Things like that, making it feel as if they were sitting right here with us. And with good audio and good leveling and all of that great stuff, it sounded as if they were right here with us. And the listeners had no idea. Well, I mean, I think if they figured out that during COVID, nobody was going anywhere, then they probably knew that nobody was going anywhere. So it made sense. So we stayed away from video, and it worked for us. It worked so well that other podcasts in the indie podcasting arena Because you know and I know in the great year of 2020, we're going to call that the podcasting year, that millions of podcasts started and launched in groups and communities and all kinds of fun stuff. A lot of these indie hobby podcasters became friends of ours. They were on the show and we met a lot of cool people, a lot of cool guests, and a lot of cool other indie podcasters just like us, starting out just like us. I felt like we were all in the same place. And so because of that, other indie podcasters were asking me questions about podcasting. Like, well, how do you make it sound so great? And what are you doing? Are you really flying people into the studio? Like, are you really doing that? We're just using Zoom or whatever. We don't have any gear. Our gear is like this or like that. And so I started answering these questions. In fact, one day, I don't know how Kristine found this, but one day, Kristine decided to set up a coaching call for us to coach via Zoom some girl that was asking about podcasting. I don't know how she reached out to her, but anyways, Kristine helped me set the whole thing up, this whole slideshow presentation. Of course, now I think about it, some of the advice I gave was probably bad because this is probably way early into our podcasting career. We're still kind of fairly new. We're still kind of learning things as we go, but we're doing this whole presentation. We're showing the girl all the things we use, all the different things, and kind of a coaching thing. And she even said to us, you guys really should charge for this like coaching thing. We're doing it for free. But at the end of the Zoom call, like I didn't know this. I didn't use Zoom much back then at all. That when I closed the browser, it deleted everything. We're trying to save the entire presentation so we can give it to her as like so she can download it and keep it for her end, the presentation. And it closed and it deleted the entire thing. We don't have it. And Kristine's like, you deleted the whole thing. You closed it before it was done rendering. Why'd you do that? I said, I did. I didn't know. I don't use this. I don't know what it's supposed to do. I didn't know you had to save it. I didn't know we had to sit here and wait for an hour. I had no idea. I just closed the computer. And so that was one mistake I did. I didn't know we were supposed to do that. So that was that. But it got me thinking about the, helping other people podcast and my need to help others podcast. And I think that's where Podtastic Audio started. And that's kind of when Podtastic Audio, at least the idea for Podtastic Audio kind of really started, was back then. And I just wanted to just share my love of podcasting. And I want to share what I've done with podcasting and why I think a lot of, at least back then, a lot of indie podcasters had such horrible audio. They were using Blue Yetis the wrong way. They were literally putting them in the middle of the room, setting it on pick up everybody in all directions, and having all their buddies just sitting around the table and just talking and drinking beers, banging and clanging glasses and mugs and beer bottles on the table in the microphone. Shows like that. There were a lot of shows like that. And I was like, oh my God, guys, let's figure this out. So that's when I started Podtastic Audio to kind of get people away from making shows like that or doing Zoom calls as podcasts with no microphones. Echo City, reverb, bad audio, and whatever. And there's probably shows that still do that. I don't know if they all do that, but that's kind of been the goal from the beginning with Podtastic Audio, was to help indie podcasters steer away from that mess. So as the years went by, doing both shows, the Kris and Kristine Show and Podtastic Audio, and as things went along, my passion for podcasting grew a lot. But Kristine's enthusiasm really faded. It started fading quickly because at that time, towards the end, she was doing her wedding business and doing her consulting business, and she was working her regular job, talking a lot for most of that stuff, and then having to come on a podcast didn't feel like fun. It didn't feel like it paid anything because it really didn't pay anything. And we bickered a lot. We started arguing on which guest to have. Can we do a guest this week? Are we recording a guest this week? Oh, I got to cancel the guest again. We've already canceled the guest twice already. They're probably not coming back. They're probably going to write us a negative review or something. I don't know. Thankfully, I don't think any of them did. But I just felt bad because here I am making promises to the listeners and to the guests we booked that week that this episode is going to go out. We're going to record something. And from my perspective, it started getting very frustrating because during the whole podcast, I forgot to mention this, Kristine and I got engaged. And during the podcast, in the middle of the heat of the podcast in 2020, we got married. So here we go from starting a relationship, doing the podcast, the beginning of the relationship. It's kind of getting going. We get engaged. We get married. The podcast is going stronger than ever. People are talking to us. We're having great conversations with other podcasters, other people, other guests. Things are going great until they're not, when things start fading, when we butt heads a lot, when we argue about doing the podcast, when I enjoy podcasting more than she did. And then recording a show together felt like a chore. And it caused a lot of tension. It didn't feel like something fun. And I was trying to keep it together. And eventually, she told me something. She said to me that she never really liked doing the podcast. And she wished that I would just stop pushing her to do the podcast. And that kind of made things very, very sad for me, because I felt like the podcast was part of our relationship. I felt like the podcast was us. And when that goes, I was seeing the writing on the wall that other things are probably going to start falling apart later down the road, and eventually did. But the podcast and the relationship started to suffer a lot during that last year of doing the podcast, or last how many months it was. And so eventually, she said, I don't feel like doing the podcast anymore. And I said, okay, fine. We don't have to. Listen, I got Podtastic audio going. That's going great. I'm doing recordings for my client show. That's going great. I'm doing that. I'm involved in the podcasting space on my own. I don't really need to be part of the Kris and Kristine Show, although that was the show that started everything. That's a show that really put me in a place where I could do Podtastic audio. And so to give that up really kind of sucked. So not only did the show pod fade, but I think that at that point, there was a real distance that kind of started to set in between the two of us. And Kristine started investing more in her career, her work, things like that. I started working on my client show, like I said, and Podtastic audio, like I am right here. And that's when the relationship started to unravel. And as it unraveled, like I said, I kept pushing Podtastic audio, working more on Podtastic audio than focusing on the relationship. And at that point, it was like a little too late, I believe. So that brings us up to the current date, which is now. So maybe about a month ago, Kristine eventually, and I saw the writing on the wall, Kristine eventually dropped the bomb on me and said that she wants a divorce. She is done. And this absolutely crushed me. And I should have seen it coming. And with the podcast, like us arguing about that and not wanting to do that anymore. And I just feel like very, very sad that something that I created, something I built, something that I had this passion for to do with another person that I loved, is walking away from it all, is wanting to file. And she did file. She actually did serve me divorce papers. It's right here. So if anyone's wanting to know why we don't do the Kris and Kristine Show anymore, that is why we don't do it anymore. We are officially separated as of whatever she told me. And it's been a very challenging thing, because not only am I losing like a co-creator of the podcast, I'm losing my best friend, the person I could talk to about anything and everything all day, any time of day. We had these wonderful conversations in the morning. We had coffee, sit down, have coffee together. And I really miss those times. And I'm not going to have them again. It's really, really sad. And it's really hard for me to adjust to a new way of life all over again, a new beginning all over again. Because when she was my anchor, she was my everything, and having to give up on all of that and start fresh all over again. It's like hitting the reset button on a video game and going from level 10 back to level 1 and having to start all over again. That's what it kind of feels like. It feels like I was on third base. Now I'm back to the dugout, ready to start all over again. here I am now as a single dad all over again. Here I am having to go from owning a house, selling that house, taking that money, putting it into this new house, having to sell this house, taking the money and figuring out where we're going to live in this next chapter of my life. So this would be divorce number 2 for me. Divorce number 1 was very hard. This one's equally hard. It's never easy, and it's sad. It's makes me feel like less of a human being. It makes me feel like, am I not worthy enough of love? Am I not worthy enough to be with anybody? Am I too fixated on something like a podcast or whatever it is that I do, whether it's work, career, that pushes women away? Yeah, so I'm having to figure out selling this house and figuring out what my next move is going to be. Starting over from scratch, this next chapter of my life, what it's going to be about. And at the same time, through it all, podcasting remains kind of this creative anchor, this creative emotional lifeline, because I love podcasting. I love community. I love talking to people. I love being around people. And that's probably why I've always gravitated towards podcasting, at least, sharing and being part of the community, because I really kind of lack that in my day job. So yeah, I plan to keep podcasting through all this, but there may be a time when I'm moving or something happening that I may have to skip a week or two. Just giving you a heads up, just because of all the things I'm going through at the moment, having to sell, having to move. I don't know where I'm going to be at, things like that. So that's what's been going on with me lately. And like I said, I love content creation. I love podcasting, but sometimes life throws you a big curveball and you just have to take it and figure out what your next move is going to be. And I'm kind of in that position right now where I'm trying to figure out where my next move is going to be. But through it all, I feel really grounded and connected to podcasting. Maybe a week or so after she told me this, I was taking the kids to Knott's Farm. It was a theme park up in the LA area, about 5 miles from Disneyland. We go there once a year around this time of year because they have the Boysenberry Food Festival. We go there for that. So we're there at the theme park with the kids and having a great time, keep my mind off of what is really troubling me at the moment. And so I have the kids with me. We're at Knott's Farm, and I'm on social media while we're standing in line, and I'm kind of browsing different things. And for some reason, I don't know why, but lots of different girls, they pop it up on my feed and lots of different things. They look kind of fake, but I'm not too sure if they're fake. They sound fake. They apparently seem like they are fake. So I'm seeing these different girls pop up my feed, and I'm like, wait a second, this person's fake. This person's fake. And then I literally probably say out loud, I say, everyone's a damn bot on here, because there are lots of bots on social media. You've probably experienced them too. So I'm like, man, everyone's a damn bot. And then I post out a tweet, I believe it was. And I said, as a joke, I said, I should make a second podcast called Everyone's a Bot. Because here I am on social media, and it seems like everyone's a bot here on social media, which is kind of funny. And then people started liking it. So yeah, do that. That sounds like fun. I would listen to that. Great idea. Sounds like fun. Amazing. And they got me thinking wait a second, really? Maybe I should make one. And so after I got home, the very next day, I started looking up what if I can make Everyone's a Bot? Let's make that podcast a reality. Then it got me thinking gosh, I haven't set up a new podcast in forever. How do you even do that? My goodness. So first things first, I started looking up different names and started searching is this show title available? Is this email available? First thing I got was the Gmail set up. Then I went over to Spotify for podcasters, old Anchor, because you know what? If it's a free, fun show, I'll make it on Spotify. If it goes anywhere, great. If it doesn't go anywhere, okay, whatever. So I set it up there. And then I started working on some artwork. After I got the artwork all dialed in, I started working on creating the social media handles, got all those dialed in. And then eventually I made the audio trailer for the podcast, and I posted that out there, got that set up good to go so that when I started the podcast, the very first thing you probably should do is put in a audio trailer for your podcast. That way, before you launch your very first episode, it's already kind of filtered through to Apple and all the different podcast players. Okay, so once I got that done, I created a few episodes and threw them out there, and I got them kind of staggered out, like they go out every single week. So right now, for fun, as kind of like maybe get my mind off of everything that's happening right now, kind of a podcast thing, other than Podtastic Audio, I started the podcast, Everyone's a Bot, a social media story. A link below in the show notes of this very episode. And it would be nice if you subscribed. It would be nice if you could leave a review. It'd be nicer if you actually listen to the show. They are very short form episodes. We're talking 5 minutes, 6 minutes-ish each. So they're very quick episodes because I figure, why not? You make them fast, make them quick, make them fun, make them easy to consume, something very simple. So that's why I made them in that kind of 5 to 10 minute range is what I was aiming for with the episodes. Maybe I'll go longer, but I don't go longer than 10 minutes. I want to keep them short and simple and easy. So in a nutshell, Everyone's a Bot is a short, raw, and hilarious venting about the absurdity of online life, the absurdity of fake people that you encounter on social media like I have. And if you have encountered crazy bot stories, I'd love to hear from you. I think sometime in the near future, I don't know when, like I said, I don't know when this is going to happen, but I would possibly like to have a guest on sharing their bot stories and taking that interview and chopping it into like 5-10 minute episodes. Yeah, so that's kind of the idea I've had with Everyone's a Bot. So far, I have, I think, 5 episodes in the can. Episode 2 is released right now. By the time this comes out, episode 3 will be out. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Please let me know with a review or anything, because this has been a fun side thing to keep my mind off the major tragic thing that's going on in my life right now. But this has been the official 200th episode of Podtastic Audio. I want to thank you once again for being here, and thank you for sticking around and listening all the way to the very end of this podcast. I do this podcast because I love podcasting. I do this podcast because I want to help you make your amazing podcast. And if you have any questions or you want to talk to me about podcasting or anything really at all, you always can reach me through my website. That is podtasticaudio.com. There is a contact page right there, and that's how you do it. You want to contact me, it comes to me directly. That is podtasticaudio.com. And I can't wait to hear about your podcast. And if you have anything you want to share, please reach out. And until next time, happy podcasting.